decided to do another live stream since I kind of have some time to conversate, and I'm pretty sure you're probably not entertained by the uh, current live streams. So I just, basically wanted to kind of share a meme and also, I guess, spark some conversation. One of the things that I find about these live streams, I don't necessarily know where the conversation is going to go. And also, I don't know if you like the content or not, or if you're going to like the content or not. So a lot of times it's surprising. So, some of the content I'll be like, well, I think they might like it, but then it's not really not that much interest in it. Or it might be a situation where it's a current topic. Usually current topics are like really like one of the things that I learned from just the kind of free information that the lead attorney gave as far as his kind of formula that he has for his like YouTube success or whatever. He said basically talk about current topics. You know, if you really want to get in the algorithm, that's how you can get right into it, is talking about the current topics. Like whatever is going on, you could talk about it and kind of keep it. That's a way you can kind of stay in the algorithm. And people, kind of can gather attention from whatever the current events are. Now, I would say if you are going to do that, you probably would want to talk about what is your similar to your expertise, because it's always going to be a topic that is like a current event that, depending on how much expertise you have in different subject matters, you can talk about those things and then actually have some expertise to add to it. Like for example, the lead attorney is an attorney, so he can talk about pretty much everything related to law, and that's even police activities and stuff like that. So that's his niche. But see, with me, I do have a wide variety of subject matter that I can talk about because I'm all over the place, because I'm a genius, and also um, I just do all kind of stuff. I got basically fish rods just all over the place. So, the concept of the fish rods is, because I'm a fisherman. My grandfather, that was basically a multimillionaire businessman, he used to get up real early and he used to fish. He liked, one of the things about my grandfather, he liked fishing, and then he also liked gardening. Like when I say gardening, not really gardening. He liked to grow crops. Like he would literally every year. This is when I knew my grandfather was pretty much phasing out. He pretty much for all my life, he in all most of his life, he used to plant crops. Like he's a basically a sharecropper. He had to, basically he lived in Mississippi in the 19 he was born in the 1930s. So when he was a little boy, he used to have to pick cotton. He used to have to pick, basically till the land, because he lived in Mississippi on a plot of land, and they were pretty much self-sufficient. They had farm animals like cows, pigs, you know, uh, chickens, and they basically lived off the land. So they, had to till the land, and then they grew crops, tomatoes, cabbage, onions, basically mustard greens, collard greens, corn, potatoes. Basically they were self sufficient. A lot you got to understand. See, this is what a lot of people don't understand. People were so poor back, like, this was only what, 80 years ago, 90 years ago, right? People were so poor, and especially black people, and it wasn't even just black people. You got to understand the Great Depression was very, very severe. It was very damaging, right? So before the Great Depression and even after the Great Depression, people had to grow crops to just survive. They didn't. I mean, yeah, like black people. That's why, like, people like that came from the South. They literally had no money. It was it was situations where they had literally no money or a little money, and they had to survive off of that little money. And part of that survival was growing crops to just survive. It wasn't, you gotta understand, it was no food stamps, wasn't no welfare card. They was not giving out welfare. Welfare pretty much, you gotta understand, you gotta research when black people were allowed to get welfare. Welfare in its exception, from what I've heard about people that pretty much researched that era in that actual subject matter as far as welfare, black people were not included in certain welfares in the history of, you want to say, the New Deal with welfare, Social Security, the GI Bill and stuff like that came, I think, a little bit later. Black people were not allowed to get those certain government programs, right? They weren't in the, black people a lot of times were excluded from certain things in history. So you got to understand, they weren't basically uh giving out welfare until after a certain time in history. And welfare pretty much, I think, got really huge in the 1960s. That was, I think that's when welfare kind of got expanded. So you got to understand, it was a period of time where it was no welfare for anyone in the United States. It was just no welfare. So you had to grow crops to survive. So I mean, basically, my grandfather grew up growing and surviving off of crops and livestock and fishing. You had to go fish to feed your family. This is like almost close to biblical days or something, like fishing and like that. That's what people had to do to survive. So basically, he is from that era. He's from that time where you had to fish, you had to hunt, you had to grow farm animals, you had to grow crops to survive. You got to understand also, black people were not liked by non-black people. They had problems with other black people around that time, and white people were not supporting them like that. They the way that they had to get support from white people was just, they had to work for them. They had to till their crops, for certain things, right? And they weren't, paid fairly a lot of times, or it was an issue where the people wouldn't pay you, possibly even because they didn't have any money, and it was, black people were an easy target. And even if you complain, you got to understand, you complain, you possibly can face a situation where the Klan was going to hang you, because the Klan, you got to understand, part of the history of this basically country is when it comes to the Klan and other white supremacist organizations, right? If you were in business and you're basically they used it as a bully system, a system of bullying. So if you competed with them in business, if you were doing well in business, and you got to understand they had businesses as well. If you were good at business, that could be a situation that they would bully you out of your business. And that means they want to get a piece of your business. They would come with Gestapo tactics. And if that didn't work, they round up the Klan. And in many cases round you up and then put crosses on your yard and tell you basically to come with us, and then they hang you because they got rid of competition. That was their way of getting rid of competition. So that was one thing. And then if you got to understand, if you work for them, they could be like, we're not paying you. If you complained about it, and if you told others about that, because they wanted to beat more people out of their money, then that could be a possibility that you end in that same fate. So they used that as a bully tactic. So people had to survive without getting paid, possibly getting beat out of their money, getting beat out of their land, getting beat out of their business. And this man, he came from that. He came from that reality, where I remember he told me a story. He was just like probably a preteen or a teenager, and he was digging some ditches for some white people, and he asked for some water. And just because he asked for water, he basically they let him go for the day and did not ask him to come back for more work. So they were very, very harsh in their treatment, and he had to survive that. So when he came up to the Midwest, the North, from Mississippi, it's almost like you got to understand a lot of people from the South, they weren't liked, in Chicago and different parts of the Midwest because they were new. It was almost like immigrants coming in from another country, because in many regards it was like they were from the country, quote unquote, but they were almost like a person that's from another country, a actual another entire country, because they had a different work ethic, a different hardship. They had certain hardships that people from the North might have had a different type of hardship, and it wasn't maybe as hard, but you got to understand it was hard in the Midwest too. As far as black people, it wasn't like black people were just doing extremely well up north, and then all of these immigrants came in from the South. That was not the case. That definitely, and you got to understand, black people were married in droves because basically a lot of black people were very, very religious. They depended on the church as a power source economically, of course, religiously and spiritually and all of that. But it was like a economic force. It was a place where people can come together to survive, right? So the thing is that when it comes down to uh, you know survival in itself, black people actually had to be married. And I'm talking about from the poor folk to the people that were in business and successful. They had to be married to survive. It wasn't too many choices. It was either stay married to survive or live a life of almost certainly abject poverty. You know, and that was for primarily for women as well, because you got to understand it was no welfare, it was no social security, it was no uh, you know Section 8, it was none of that. It was like literally you had to have a man to survive. The woman definitely, 100%, almost 99%, she needed to get with the man for survival. And she didn't really have too many other options. And also, it was just for economic survival was very, very much the reason why they stayed together and also got married in the first place. And that was during that time as well, right? In up north it was cold, so you got to understand, black people always had a hard time surviving that cold weather. It still has not really changed. I mean, other than people ain't struggling like that, but black people in the north was definitely freezing and dealing with all kinds of hardships when it comes to trying to survive up north. The white people up north practice racism, discrimination a little different. They have a different strategy, but it wasn't like there was some utopia, and black people up north in the Midwest were living in this utopia around white people. White people just had a different way of dealing with certain things when it comes to dealing with black people. Primarily, if you ever saw this movie, it's called The Deacons of Defense. It's a line in that movie that kind of more or less explains the difference between white people from the north and white people down south. The line in the movie, without giving it away, it doesn't really give it away. It's just a line in the movie. But the guy said, one of the deacons of defense said, the difference between a white person from the north and a white person down south, the white guy from the south, he don't mind living next to you as long as you're not making more money than they are or doing better than they are. They don't mind living next to you. But the white man up north don't really care how good you do, uh, as long as he does not live next to you. And that pretty much kind of explains it, almost to the teeth, of the difference between, you could even say, a Democrat or a Republican, or a white dude from the north from a white dude from the south. It really, that kind of philosophy, or um I guess system, or whatever you want to call it, it's still pretty relevant, even though now it's not, it's not really that ironclad. They used to be ironclad about that, but it's not. If you got if you got $200,000 to buy a house, and it just so happened to be in a white neighborhood, I mean, they'll stomach you. They won't necessarily, be probably inviting. And I'm talking about, the Midwest or whatever, or primarily, Chicagoland area. That's where I'm from, but I've been all over the Midwest. But the thing is that, yeah, they'll stomach you. They'll give you looks. They might even say words, but they'll deal with you. Um, it's not, like it used to be a time you couldn't live next to them at all. Like you couldn't move in the area. It would put up, it would be a all out war if you moved into a middle class, or not even middle class, a white neighborhood in the north. Back in, you could just say pre 1960 or 1970. So, but now, I mean, of course, you could live anywhere, but you're not going to be it's not going to be an inviting situation. You're going to get looks wherever you go, snide remarks, possibly very much so. Your children, you damn near, I would say, if you gonna move into a predominantly white area and you have children, it's like the equivalent of putting it literally what I'm saying is going on right now with these twins, the white twins and the black dude that stabbed one of the twins because he put his hands on them. That is exactly the type of environment, very similarly to what your children, possibly black children, would have to deal with. I mean, it is it's almost like, what can I describe it? It'll be like putting your kids, I mean, like it'd be like going to the military, because going to the military is hard. I'm trying to think about a hard thing to actually do. Like you could get past the military, you could get, out of boot camp and everything like that, but it's kind of hard. I'm not gonna say as hard as boot camp, but it's up there because you got to deal with a lot of, if for a kid to, not have a worldview, where he just he's learning things, and that's his first encounter, where he's got to just go with all of these people that don't look like him and trying to touch his hair. And I mean, it just I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I would not want to necessarily have my kids in a type of environment like that, but they kind of already, my kids already kind of have to deal with that because of where they live. But it's, they got a Hispanic element that they, have to deal with too. I mean, when I grew up, it was mostly black people. It was like I went to mostly schools where it was like the, black suburbia, and it was a few Hispanics, a few white. That was pretty much it. So, that environment is, you ain't got nobody trying to touch your hair because we all, everybody has the same type of hair, but you gonna get into fights either way because you gonna get, into little battles, little Klingon battles and yo mama battles and all kinds of stuff that you got to deal with, growing up, fighting, black people, in school, you're gonna have fights and all of that type of stuff. It gets worse. It got worse in the city. It's progressively gotten worse. The suburbs, used to go down in the suburbs too. It was some shootings and some gang activity and stuff like that, but it wasn't as bad as Chicago. Chicago is like the epicenter of, a lot of those kids that are shooting each other and got switches. They're in the age range of pretty much 13. You want to say 23. So preteens with guns, by the time they're in high school, they already got a gun and got a body or two. By the time they got in high school, by the time they get through high school, uh, they probably slinging packs. They already had cars in high school. It's pretty crazy, in Chicago. It's been that way. Like what I just described, that's like the '90s and the 2000s. It's pretty crazy in Chicago as far as the realities that some of those kids had, like, selling a whole bunch of drugs, and you 15 years old and you driving a Mercedes Benz with a fake license. It's crazy. It's like almost sci-fi when you start to think about all of the realities of, people that grow up early. They are already doing illegal activities that adults would probably be doing, and they're doing it at 13 and 12 years old, 14 years old. Parents, may know about it, or don't know about it, might even be in, it's dudes that sold drugs, that sold their mom drugs, sold their dad drugs. It's crazy. It's that that element is involved as well. Like, but yeah, this is the whole crack cocaine epidemic. The you know pretty much the Iran Contra. Reagan administration, right? Conspiracy, right? That's not even tinfoil hat talk. The conspiracy, it's not even a conspiracy because it got uncovered. They uncovered the CIA, basically operation. I think it was Maxine Waters and the dude. I think Gary Webb. They basically found out about the CIA's role in pushing crack cocaine in the black community, and playing two heads at one destabilizing South America, Central America, Mexico, pushing guns, drugs, basically funding wars, and then destroying the black community, right? And then destroying the border and south of the border all the way down to South America. I mean, it was a clever plot. It was very, very clever, extremely clever. You got to understand the level of chess that was played in that particular situation. Is very, very 3D chess. And the thing is that the blowback from that is still going on today. It's just an extreme version of it. Now it's still crack cocaine is now it's heroin and fentanyl mixes and tranquilizer drugs and all kinds of other stuff, right? Pills, oxycontin, oxycodone, all of these different pills, right? Percocets, Molly Percocets, right? So it's still it's it, it's just all kinds of stuff out there now. You know, just all kinds of crazy stuff out there to get high as a fucking balloon. And the thing is that yeah, it's that's what pretty much between feminism, welfare, and you'd say if you had to put the black community as far as the whole baby daddy, what exploded the baby daddy culture and killed marriage, killed the black community as far as things, if you had to bring three strikeouts, like three strikes you out, the first strike was definitely welfare. You could say, okay, let's say three things, right? Three strikes. The first one is, you could say, was welfare. Definitely the welfare was a way where it was a possible scenario where women could basically get funding to get out their mother's house and have their fun with their boyfriend, or the guy that, yeah, their boyfriend that they're dating, without the approval of their father, or with yeah, most likely without the approval of their father, right? And they could get an apartment and they could get welfare by having their boyfriend that really didn't get the approval from their father, or they didn't, their father doesn't like the guy, or even their mama don't like the guy, and they're maybe they're single, their mom's a single mother, and their mother don't even like the guy, right? Or whatever crazy scenarios involved with that shit that I can go with. But the thing is that they can go have that fun, you know, deal with that guy, the fun guy that makes them laugh and has got a, kind of a bad boy flair, They run with them and be this bad girl with this bad boy, right? And you know have a baby. They basically a struggle, but they can get welfare, right? They can get Section 8 possibly, right? So they can get public housing. They could go get public housing and live in the projects and be with their bad boy, right? Living the bad life, right? With government funding. Then the second thing is feminism. The other CIA plot. See, all of these both of these three things I'm going to mention is it's all backed by the government. These are all plots. It's basically uh, strategies to destabilize marriage. Obviously these things affected also, it really affected poor white people and also other people, that were vulnerable to this. Black people were the main culprits that were targeted, right? Yet others will also, is part of that trajectory where they're suffering too. Their families are jacked up too because they got in the crossfire of this, situation, right? So, feminism came in, other, plot, whatever, from the CIA, right? What's old girl named Margaret Sanger, right? CIA asset. She, basically forms this group, this feminist movement, and they looked at obviously targeted black women to join this cause. They were already working, they were already really strong people that, you know, uh, white women looked up to deal with the patriarchy, and it's like all of this was a plot. It was a plot by the oligarchs and plutocrats, which, is founded the CIA, the Ivy League elite, right? So the thing is, all of this stuff is going on, and okay, you got the first strike was basically the first strike was welfare, right? Black community, right? Black women taking that welfare, taking that handout, right? And being able to be basically a renegade, do whatever I want to, or without mommy and daddy's approval, right? Or with or without, right? So then you got secondly, the second strike was feminism, black female adoption of feminism, right? To be, this, do all of these things. From the extreme version of feminism is lesbianism, right? And then just kind of be, feminist thing, right? The whole feminist agenda, right? Do a deep dive in that, they understand what the feminist agenda is. I don't get into all of that shit. I don't do a deep dive. I don't know first wave, second wave, the wave, do the wave, go to a baseball game or a basketball game or football game, they do the wave. Like, I don't know fucking anything about that. I don't know hardly any details other than a lot of women definitely are feminists. And then, I do believe, like, BGS said that a lot of the modern day education system is, kind of pretty much very feminist as far as their kind of social, I guess you would say, engineering on, men and women from the Gen Xers to, onward. Because the teachers, they were already working, and the teachers come from the, middle and lower middle class, or middle and lower classes, right? For primarily speaking, right? So, because rich women don't have to fucking be teachers, right? They don't have to go. They don't have to get up in the fucking morning and go open up a classroom door, right? So the poor women and middle class women, like my mother, were teachers, right? So the thing is that from all of that, a lot of those women, because they already were working, they're already from a lower socioeconomic class, they chewed into and basically got really into feminism. They got really into trying to be a feminist, right? So that's the second strike. Okay, strike. Here's the strikeout. Thirdly, well, I just said earlier, CIA, Iran, Contra, dumping drugs, crack cocaine in the black community. Three strikes, you're out. And then that brung in all of that shit, ushered in baby mamaism, baby daddyism in the black community that is still going on today. Like it's, still, this is, people don't understand why this like basically this what I just said about three strikes you're out. This is why the black community is so fucking jacked up. This is why black relationships are so fucked up. This is why the marriage rate and the divorce rate and the fucking every rate, single rate, all of this shit rate is fucked up. This is why this shit is. It is, basically fucking, all of this shit was basically government socially engineered. And basically starting with, you know, basically not feminism, the welfare handout, the social, social systems, government subsidies, right? Secondly, feminism. Then thirdly, basically this crack cocaine epidemic in the black community. I mean, that is why this shit so fucked up. And it's not just fucked up for black people. It's fucked up for everyone, and it spreads. Every fucking one is involved in it. It's like a wide net that all of the elites, the elites. I'm talking about, when I say the elites, I'm talking about those that are in these rooms making decisions. Okay, whatever that is, right? They didn't just target the black community. It was not just the black community. They were their probably main target, but the other targets were basically the lower classes. Period. That was their target. I mean, and they got everyone involved with this net, including it's so bad that that plot and that plan is eating them away, literally eating at their family, fucking their family up. It's like whoever created this, right? You could talk about who was the richest group amongst this actual country, right? Who stands to gain the most, right? It's the people, with the Star of David, right? They pretty much, a lot of them already are, they're pretty smart, right? They're, just say them, they're pretty fucking smart, right? If you really think about how smart these people are, man, it'll blow your mind, right? That's the most, lucrative weapon you have is your mind, right? Basically, a lot of people, kind of, don't really know what to say when it comes to what they think about what's going on versus what actually goes on. It's like basically when it comes down to it, those three strikes. I mean, it literally destroyed this country. Those three things are like, basically it makes I'm thinking about like almost revelations level type stuff, like where it wasn't just like the black community is all fucked up and the black marriage is all fucked up. This shit fucked the whole America up. It people talk about like the immigrants and this and that. I mean, yeah, that's one aspect, but okay, that what I just mentioned with these, three strikes and you're out, with government subsidies, uh, basically to undermine family structures, nuclear families, right? The feminist movement, the basically drug uh, pushing in the black community and other poor communities, right, in America, in the basically Iran Contra saga, right, during the Reagan administration. This shit destroyed this fucking country. I mean, that was in the fucking 80s, and this shit is still fucked off of this. And it is still fucked. Literally, it's getting ate up by all of these different elements. And it is unfortunately, it ain't no genie putting this back in the box. It's no genie. It's no genie going back in the lamp. It's no fucking you know opening up Pandora's box and putting this back in it. It's already it's already done. You know, the best you can understand this actually happened. I'm not making this up. You know, whether you like me or don't, like what I talk about or don't, what I'm saying is not untrue, unfortunately. And the thing is that you could take it or leave it. As far as understanding this and possibly getting with other like-minded people to try to like have some type of like group away from this type of dysfunction and understanding this dysfunction to the utmost degree and taking it actually serious and understanding that what you're up against and who you're actually up against, and then trying to have some type of kind of almost new wave of trying to form with like-minded people to that understand these things and work against them, and whoever against them is whoever them is, right? And just kind of focusing in on that and just trying to kind of create some type of uh you know like-minded understanding with each other as far as what's actually going on, and trying to start some type of nuclear family within that and spread that out. I mean, it's like not trying to make some type of organization or something like that, but just kind of like just spreading the message as far as understanding, okay, these certain things that you might think is okay, and people are programmed to work, kind of almost just a lot of what I see about a lot of the black community, especially I would just say just in a lot of democratic ran cities, it's almost like they have it's like a system where the system is based off of, at the very base, okay, you get a government, you want, and this is for black people, this is like what I see as far as black people, coming up in Chicago. Like, I see that the basis is, okay, if you need to get welfare is okay. You can tap into welfare, go to school, work hard, and welfare, don't forget, welfare is not bad. And then, not really any good advice as far as who you should date, who you should, try to marry. And you just kind of like, that's, it's kind of up in the air a little bit, but you got to figure it out. And then if you don't figure it out, remember, it's welfare right there if you need it. Oh, you need welfare now? If you need it, I could drop you off at the welfare office. I mean, it was just like, you got to understand, a lot of the people that I know, um, this was their mindset. Like, welfare was like almost like an anchor. If push come to shove, you could tap into government housing. You can get on the waiting list for Section 8. Like, this is who I grew up around. So you got to understand, the people that I grew up around, even in the suburbs, a lot of them had this kind of mindset where, if you could try to do whatever you want, and get a job and go to school, and you know if it doesn't work out, you could always get welfare, or work a job that you don't really need a degree for. And I mean, it's just, yeah, it was just a lot of, I would say, lowered expectations, and this is pretty much what you see in a lot of kind of lower socioeconomic areas. And even black, people that had money had similar mindsets where, if you need welfare, it's okay. And it's like, the thing is that's why I say you gotta almost damn near create another type of, you know society within the society of whatever's left of black society. You damn near have to create your own separate group. Like, when I'm talking about, just where you know what's going on, and then you just don't try to blend in with everybody else, or you almost have to pretend that you do blend in, because if you don't, you be considered outcast. So it's almost like you have to just pretend that, it's almost, a lot of times you do have to do that when you do have a certain reality. Like, you can't go really, this is what I know about just somebody that has a house that's paid off, right? You can't go to your job, let's just say if you have a job, and tell people that you have a paid off house. You can't do that, even if you want to, because here's the thing: most people you work with, I would say about 90 something percent of the people that you work with, they're working because they need to pay a mortgage or rent. And the fact that you even work with them, they probably like, what the hell do you even work here for? We're working to pay rent and mortgages. What the hell you're here for? So when you start telling people, man, you got a house that's paid off, it's like them. Or you tell people even that you're not in debt. You don't have no debts. You don't got no student loans, or all your debts is paid off. You can't even explain that, because both of those things is like, almost, you're not even, it's almost like it's not, I won't say you're, because the dude Save His Mind Is Dead, he say people are aliens once they get to, but it's damn near, but not really. It's like you from another country at the very least, not a, or it's almost like you're a rich person. but you're not really rich. Because just because you're out of debt, or you have more assets than debt, or you just basically not in debt, that doesn't necessarily make you rich. But you damn near a rich man, which most people don't really know too many rich people, right? Like that. I'm talking about personally, not celebrities and stuff. So it's like it's a rare thing. You do understand it's rare, especially if you black. You understand the rareness of it if you really think about it. If you turn your TV off and you don't count the celebrities and the entertainers, right, and the sports players, it's just regular people that have maybe entrepreneurs, or they, for whatever reason, they're millionaires or they're really rich. It's not that many people like that. So the thing is that's how it is. But it ain't that big of a deal as far as being, you're not rich. You don't have the common everyday problems that a lot of people have, including especially black people. Like, black people are very, very much in debt. For a lot of black people are in debt. A lot of black people definitely are paying rent. 58% black people pay rent or are renters, and paying mortgages obviously as well. So when you talking about you're not in debt, and you own a house, you're not rich in that scenario, but you're damn near. And it's like it's strange to most black people. So, and it's not even just black people, like people in general. So if you go to work and you talk about you're not in debt, and you don't have a mortgage on your house, and you actually have a title, depending on how good that is to you or not. I mean, obviously, it's people that actually do own a house and they don't live in a ghetto. But even if you do, it's still right. It's still you at least own, versus you got a mortgage, right? Because it is people in the ghetto that's paying mortgages. You do know that, right? Even in Gary, Indiana, there's people that have actually mortgages. I know that might be mind blowing to you, but the thing is that yes, you don't have. Let's just imagine you're just not in debt. Most people, you probably don't want to tell people at a job, definitely, that you're out of debt or you're not in debt, because most people are in debt. Like pretty much close to 75% of Americans are in debt. Actually, more than 75%. I think it's like 78%. So you telling most of the people that you work with you don't have their problem that they literally show up to work for every day, and you don't have their other major problem, which is you don't have a rent payment or a mortgage payment. You do not want to fucking tell people at no job that's your reality. Which, if you add the home ownership to it and add the basically not in debt part, just me thinking about it, how rare that actually is. Like, you would have to add how many people actually own their home, and the actual part about, I think it's like 20 something percent of Americans are not in debt. So you add how many people, what's the percentage of people actually own their own home, and then add how many people are not in debt. You understand how rare that actually statistically is. And you going to some job telling people that you're pretty much rare, not rich, but damn near, because it's pretty much a lot of people that are basically don't have that actual reality, and you do. And you going to go to work to blast that off and tell people that you're basically a rich man, pretty much, working with all of these other people that are not that rich or don't have that scenario. And you see how goofy that actually was, that I was doing that. Going to actual work and telling people those actual realities of mine. And it's like, that is so dumb. And it made my life definitely difficult going to work, because they like, look at this motherfucker. Look at Lucky Johnny coming into work today. You know, I gotta go pay. I'm getting calls after work or at my job about my landlord calling me about rent, and then look at little Johnny here. I'm damn near 2 months behind on my mortgage, or 3 months behind on my mortgage. Little Johnny here, he ain't even gotta put no mortgage payment in. You know, inward. It's like, you don't go do that. I just, you don't do that shit, man. And I had to learn the hard way. But the thing is this, right? If you actually, get with like-minded people, and then stay away from this dysfunction, i.e., government subsidies, right? That puts you in a position that you have to be poor, and you have to be, basically in a state of financial dysfunction, a permanent state of financial dysfunction, basically. And so you can get this government subsidy, and also adopt feminism, meaning, basically don't have healthy cohesive relationships with men, and basically be damn near pretty much a man hater, and then basically fall into the drug trap, right? If you're aware of these things and is able to stay away from these things, you basically free of the propaganda that was pushed for the last 70 years, pretty much. And you're free of the dysfunction and the strings of dysfunction that is in the black community and other communities as well. You get out of that, right? And you get away from that as much as you possibly can. And then you understand those things form healthy, cohesive family units. I just, pretty much gave you the formula, right? Just with that, right? Because the same solution is in reverse, right? You know, take the you if you repair a laptop screen, you take the screen apart, right? You get to the screen, you take it off, you put a new screen in there. Then you got to do the reverse to put the screen back, right? So the thing is that, yeah, that's how you do that. That's how you kind of basically beating the elite at their own game, and you are elite now. Now you have an elite family where you get with other black people that have this same mindset, and you form healthy, cohesive family units, which form communities, which splash in some business in that, right? And there you go. Now you creating small enclaves of successful communities, and you don't have to worry about all of these problems, because okay, whenever you see these problems, you see these strikes, right? These strikers, what they're about. They're about nothing good, because you've seen the black community, right? You've heard the broke genius, right? Talk about the three strikes you're out. You heard other people talk about it. The way I'm describing it is the way I'm describing it now, but other people talked about this for years on YouTube, right? Everybody damn near that you know of, right? They talked about these things. They might have just, kind of zeroed in on feminism or whatever. But the thing is that it was been said nonetheless. And one of the things that I'm saying is you got to understand these things are all proven. You can just do a short deep dive and find out everything that I said is actually true about the government pushing these agendas, all three of them. And their main target definitely was the black community. Breaking up the black nuclear family, mother, father, children, right? And even the black people have an extended family model and been had an extended family model. I mean, my family, my mom's side, black, African American, they pretty much had an extended family. Well, yeah, if a person needed to stay long enough or whatever, they could live in the household. At one particular time to kind of survive a situation or whatever, it converts to a extended family. It works. Basically, if your grandparents, they basically had their the daughter has to come back and live with the family for a period of time because something happened or whatever. They need to save some money to get in a place, to house or apartment or whatever. These things happen where the family goes from a nuclear family to an extended family. That's what the grandparents' house was. That's the power of your grandparents. Your grandparents were there if needed. If you really needed kind of like an emergency crutch. The black grandparent family bond is literally everything. I mean, literally, like that is the power source. This the foundation, right, of the family. So that is definitely something that I pretty much, I would say most families probably have. In primarily is broken down because you have now situations where the grandparents are just, they're not grandparents, it's just one grandparent. Mother is, the father is somewhere else. The grandfather, I joked a few months back, I don't know how long, several months back, and I was like, laughing, but it's kind of tripped out because the grandparents are not your grandparents of old. Like grandma is separate from grandfather. She doesn't have a husband. She's a single grandma, and I remember growing up and my grandmother would cook breakfast on Saturday or Sunday, and my grandfather would sit in his favorite spot, and we would have eggs and whatever, um and yeah, like that scenario is a little different now. Grandma just cooking, and she just cooking for herself maybe, or maybe the family. And granddad is wherever granddad is. Like granddad, he got his own family, or he by himself in an apartment. He's away from grandma. She's somewhere else, cooking breakfast. She's probably still cooking breakfast, or maybe not cooking breakfast. Ordering DoorDash. And basically granddad is wherever granddad is. And that's a lot of what you're gonna see, and it's gonna be just like that because you gotta understand people ain't listening. I don't think. I mean, I believe my message is powerful, but damn, I mean, God dog, I don't know. I just I would hope it's powerful as I possibly can imagine, but I don't think this is gonna go back into the bottle. I don't think this is going back into the box as far as what's already going on with the single mom stuff. But I will say this. This is what I will say. All this stuff about, the dating and all of that. I do think that messages do spread, and it obviously is because when you hear people you hear people complaining, especially modern media, when they're complaining about YouTubers and shit, like that means that the message is very strong. So with a message being strong, that means that it's having some type of cause and effect on particular people. And when it comes to actually the message of the possibilities of change, where now you seeing people, trying to stop not, trying to stop being a simp, or trying to maybe take a step back approach on, okay, should I use dating apps? Should I date? Should I actually date? Should I, is it worth dating a single mother, or is it worth dating whoever? Like, should I buy this? Should I spend this or whatever? Like, when it comes to that, it does play a role. Like, if people do spread a message of, okay, I'm not going to do this and I'm not going to do that, strip clubs are already dying out, and that's a sign because people just get older and they don't really mess with that like that. Like, you got to understand the demographics of demographics in itself. You got particular generations that don't have the same activities. It's not. So for example, the Gen Z generation, they're not drinking like that. They're not drinking like the millennials or the Gen Xers or the boomers. They have the lowest drinking rates out of all of the generations. I mean, I don't even, to be honest, I know that basically most, I'll just say the most profitable liquor distributors in the world. You could say Diageo. You could put Diageo in that. You could put uh basically whoever make Hennessy and all of those, French bottlers, or I think the LVMH people own Hennessy. So basically, the Arnauts, I think is Richard Arnaut, but basically a Frenchman. He, well, they gotta know the Gen Zers they're not fucking drinking like that. They not into drinking like that. They seen they mom drink. She didn't do fucking well in life. They might have seen they dad drink. He ain't do fucking well in life. They like, man, fuck that shit. I'm not drinking. Fuck I gotta drink for. Now they might be doing other shit, right? Pills and all of that, right? But the thing is that they not drinking, bruh. They not drinking. So you gotta understand, these liquor companies, they already know this fact, right? They have people in all kinds of different job markets. They got people that are, probably into demographics and marketing and all kinds of shit. So they already know this trajectory. They already are probably planning for this. Like, they know these people, this generation is not drinking like that. Hello, hello. Alarm bells ring, So the thing is that when it comes to what actually they're going to do about this, as far as I don't know, but Gen Z ain't drinking. Gen Z ain't going to no strip clubs because what the fuck is at the strip club? A 2 drink minimum. Hello, hello. Anybody home, right? They ain't drinking. They ain't paying no goddamn 2 drink minimum because they ain't drinking like that. You know, the millennials probably ain't even messing with the strip club like that, to be honest. Or drinking like, I mean, they drink, but the younger millennials, probably not as much as the older for sure. The older, like closer to Gen X or millennials, and they not the younger millennials probably not drinking like that. They playing video games, knocking back sodas probably, but not fucking drinking like that. So the thing is that whole point is that's why the strip clubs is closed because it, mainly the different generations that will probably go to the strip clubs, they ain't into the strip clubs like that. you know they don't see the whole point. They not drinking. Hello, they're not drinking. They not doing other shit, and they playing video games too. They're not. They're kind of maybe even socially awkward where you know they weren't necessarily raised to go to the strip club. You got to think about that aspect too. You got to be like you got to be raised to actually go to the strip club, and you got to be honest with yourself. Gen Z wasn't necessarily raised to go to the strip club. I was raised to go to the strip club because I was hanging with fast dudes, and we was going to parties, and there used to be strippers at these parties. But even me, to be honest with me and my homies, we looked at strippers. We were both the same age, so we was Gen Xers. We looked at strippers like, what the fuck is this? Like, cause we was already, wild and fast, and kind of, we was already out there, kind of, what I'm saying, uh, chasing women and getting with women in high school. So trying to look at a stripper that's just got her clothes on, dance around, it was like, goofy. Like if you already got women to kind of, what I'm saying, give you some, box, like you ain't worried about no damn stripper just dancing around. Your chick that you with, she dancing around, whatever, doing more than that, dancing on your joint. Yeah, you look at a stripper like, what the fuck is this? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's at least we both had the same mindset. Like, we doing more than just we teenagers doing more than just touching a woman, or not even, you couldn't even touch them, or they just watching them dance. That's kind of corny. That was like both corny to us, and we were younger Gen Xers. Like that, the idea of a stripper, you got to really understand, it was for men that were kind of corny, and they couldn't get women to do certain things, so they had to pay them. That was what the strip club was designed for in the first place. So the idea of it is very much, you're a super simp in the first place to go to a strip club, because you gotta understand the strip club was designed for simps in mind. That was what it was designed for. Because you have to really, to be honest, be a simp to go to be into strip clubs in the first place. I don't care what generation you're in, because the idea of it is basically a brothel, because the whole sex in the champagne room. So you really just, you can't do anything but pay for sex, right? You the only way you can have sex is paying a woman, right? So there was just one aspect of getting the same thing, which is, rather than going to a strip club, you could just contact the actual stripper, right? That ain't in the club. You don't have to go to the club, right? Like, you just go on the escort site, and then you reach that same conclusion. It's not, no one's better, but it's like, you don't have to go to the strip club. You just you know, you you eliminate one step in the scenario, right? So it's like, yeah, I mean, that was the whole thing. Like, you don't gotta go get a dance and all of that type of crap. Like, you know, it's too many steps. So the thing is that either one, you know, why go through all of this extra step if you get into the same result? You know, it's like that's what the whole strip club thing is about. Like, um, and it's definitely a situation where why is you throwing all of this money? It's like it's the most, if you really think about the whole idea of the strip club, right? It's for super simps, like super Saiyan simps, super intergalactic simps, right? Because you got to understand, right? Let's just look at a John or a Trick, right? He's, you know, he's a loser. That's why they call him Johns, right? And Tricks, right? But he's losing so much. He okay, if the chick charges $100 or $50 or $80 or $60, that's what she charged. That's what you paying. That's what the John is paying, right? You know, he's a simp for paying, right? Okay, you can say that. He's a form of a simp for paying. You could argue that, maybe not, maybe not really, because you know we ain't gonna we gonna get out of that one. But the thing is that when you think of the idea of the strip club, right? You hear Cam Newton, which, you know, last I heard, Cam Newton is complaining about all of the money that he actually spent because, you know, money ain't coming in like that, like the NFL, right? Well, it's coming, but it's not NFL money. But the thing is that Cam Newton, like other people like James Harden, they're popular for, you know, the strip clubs because they used to throw hundreds of thousands of dollars. Them and their friends and other people used to have all of these contests about throwing the most money to the strippers, right? And they're, you know, sleeping with these same strippers, right? But it's like you got to understand, to a dude that's just paying for play, right? You're a super simp because you're overpaying. Like, it's no limit. Like, you know what I'm saying? You trying to spend $100,000 to sleep with a chick, or you spending $1,500,000. You throwing a 200, $400 a night plus an extra charge to sleep with the chick. And it's like, dude, what it the you know it and you gotta understand, that's why dudes do have a mindset where they like, okay, the idea of being a simp, they don't care about that. They don't. You got dudes that don't care about being called simps. They absolutely are insane about women. Like, it mind blowingly super Saiyan level simps. You know that money is no object, is no price when it comes to women, and these are these guys, and you know a lot of them go broke, right? But a lot of this culture is dying out to a certain extent as well, because you got to understand it's a lot of moving parts with this. But yeah, I don't know. I you know, I'm not saying that people not making money, but you got to also understand it's been an unstable economy for like what, the last, what, almost 20 years has been very much an unstable economy. You know, going back 2000, you know, we could go back to 2008 crisis, right? The mortgage crisis. That wasn't, you know, it wasn't like, you know, it was just like this golden age that came after that. You know, it was basically one crisis to another from that time onward. It was just one event after the other. A rocky situation. I mean, the stock market boomed definitely after 2008, and obviously crypto took off. But how many people actually was in crypto in the stock market? Very few. How many people were in real estate? Not that many, right? Business, not that many, right? So the gains from people working jobs, if you weren't in tech or if you're not in tech, you didn't make no gains hardly. To be really, really honest, the minimum wage, didn't rise that much. I mean, people did start making more money, but then prices went up, right? So it's like basically, well, you got some young people that they went through that same period of time. They remember their parents going in that time, and they don't really have that much money now. Things are struggling for them. They got to live with their parents. They ain't got no money to really trick off like that. They don't have no money to, you know, pay no chick an exorbitant amount for, some strip club dances with, whatever else happens after that. They don't have that money. They don't have that reality. A lot of them, you know, they don't, they might want to put their money in crypto while they live with their mom, and they working at their little job or whatever. They ain't got no money to go to no damn strip club, and they don't drink. So I mean, it's like it just, when you really think about it like that, because I didn't really think about it in that, as far as how the different generations support, certain establishments or old establishments like a strip club. Well, when I thought about disease, just this live stream, it makes perfect sense why the fucking strip club, basically is going out of businesses, and a lot of clubs are going out of businesses because, well, when you got to understand, when millennials getting older and Gen Xers start getting older, they're not like going to be able to go to no club or bar or anything like that. They are, but a lot of them are gonna start drinking at home. They ain't gonna be going to no bars. They ain't gonna feel like it, or you know, might be aged out. I don't know. I guess I don't know if it's a time that you get aged out the bar. I mean, at least my grandfather didn't get aged out of the bar. The time he got aged out of the bar, shit, he just, started getting sick, and where he had to go on hospice and shit because, he, just started just kind of phasing out. But he was going to the bar until damn near his last days. Like, so I don't know, but the thing is that when it comes to certain generations, like I say, the Z's, it ain't gonna be no bars because they not drinking, you know. So the bars are gonna start closing. First, the strip clubs, then after a while, the nightclubs are already in, kind of closing down a little bit. You know, I'm hearing things about, nightclubs kind of having to do certain things to kind of survive, throw parties and all of that. Or, certain cities, it might be more lucrative than others. I mean, Chicago has a pretty good club scene. But, you got to understand, well, I went out about a week or two ago, and, you know, a lot of the people that I noticed was out and about, they were millennials and older. It was some Z's, but not much, I don't think. And it was like basically a bunch of older people, like millennials and younger millennials, maybe a few, quite a few older millennials, and then a few Xers. I mean, I was out there, but you know, well, from the data that we all have, as far as I guess Generation Z and their drinking habits, well, it's safe to say that 20 years from 20 years from now, those nightclubs that already were kind of trying to deal with are having hard times, or closing up. Well, they gonna start closing those up, like where it's gonna be hardly any nightclubs. Then that's gonna trickle down to the bars. The bars are gonna be closing up. You got to understand that, how to kind of think about the future, and like look at the fucking signs and follow those signs. The fucking strip clubs are fucking almost out of fucking business. These women are saying that the strip club is like, it goes from a situation where they were making thousands of dollars a night, or those some nights are like that, but it's some nights that they're making $4 and $5 and $7 and stuff like that. That's a sign of, okay, this is probably not a lucrative business for them to be in, because it's the money is drying up, and it's not going. Usually things don't progress, they or they don't digress, they progress, so it gets worse. So this is from like a sign to come. Is going to go down the nightclubs, then the actual bars, because all of these establishments have something in common, which is alcohol. For sure, alcohol is involved with all of these, and you gotta understand, the people, the business class, they already got the reports on this, you know, um, actual statistical chart, as far as the drinking habits, and they already probably have some type of, you know, strategy that they're going to try, or whatever marketing ploy or whatever. They already have this, you know. But the thing is that it's going to possibly happen, and I'm seeing the signs. And like I say, I didn't really think about the whole generation aspect. Once I started breaking that down, that pretty much explains, why that scenario with the nightclubs is closing down. But I mean, like I say, I always thought the whole idea of strippers was just kind of weird anyway. I remember one of my homies, I gave him some coins to throw at a stripper, because we'd just be at a party and there would be some strippers they invited to kind of liven up the party. We was in high school, and I was like, man, I gave him some change. He threw it at the stripper, and that stripper was pissed. Oh my God, that stripper was pissed. And it was so embarrassing. But I mean, it was just a thing where, I mean, we were, some corny dudes or whatever, kind of just kind of grimy, kind of fast, and it wasn't like we was just incels and we was just disgusted at women and we threw some coins at the stripper. It was just goofy to both of us. I would say definitely I could understand how goofy it was, because just the idea, it looked good, a woman dancing kind of naked or whatever, but I mean, we were already past the point of that being something, where it's just like, oh my God, look at this woman is naked dancing, or she's got a G string on. I mean, we were already, basically active at that point, so it wasn't no big deal. But the thing is, basically, a lot of these things I could definitely see where they're going to, not be, industries that were lucrative, with the size of the, definitely the strip clubs. But the whole thing is that when it comes down to it, what's going to be the scenario of, you know, definitely black families, nuclear families? What is going to be that? What is going to be, the marriage rates after the boomers start to pass away? You know, what's going to be that marriage rate? What is going to be that divorce rate? And so on and so forth. But I mean, there's hope. I'm optimistic. One of the things that I do know about the millionaire class is that is the marriage class, because over 75% of millionaires are married couples, and there's powers in marriage, right? There's certain concepts of just, I mean, if you even just think about it as from a perspective of, I make $100,000, you make $100,000, that's $200,000, or close to $250,000, versus if I just make $100,000 and I make it by myself, it's not that powerful, right? So when two people come together and they understand that component, and they, build money together, and it's easier to do everything with two people doing, anything together, damn near. Uh, when it comes to making money, you imagine you're both on the same page, as you should be. It's easy to do certain things now, like, oh, a coffee shop costs what, $50,000. Well, you both can put some money in a pot and make that a reality that probably would have took, a few years to 5 years. You could do it maybe in 1 year or two, or less than two, no more than 2 years, you know, at the worst, right? You can do that easily, with a married couple. Want to start a restaurant. Restaurant is, probably around that same price, maybe a little bit more, depending on what you got going on. But you could do that with a couple versus you doing it by yourself. You got to hire people. Well, you could start off, you got basically y'all both, work different shifts. You could, go on your own, try the whole thing out without quitting the job, or maybe one could quit the job and the other could work the business. You could do all of these things when you have two people involved that's on the same page. So that's why also a lot of people, this is what people don't understand. Like, this is what a lot of women don't understand, especially black women, when they talk about, I don't want no, broke man, or I want no man that ain't got no money and all of that. Well, people like that with that mindset don't understand the power of kind of understanding who's a good partner, or who's a good, mate, because a lot of women are just terrible at finding mates, and they complain about white women that see these men and they do the same thing. They actually, they get these guys that's like underdogs, and they can spot them. And black women complain about they don't have the ability to take the risks that white women are able to do, and all that goofy shit. And it's like, yeah, these white women, they get with these underdog black men, and they get them, and then they just treat them like really good, like they will probably even do one of their quote unquote white men, and they submissive to them. And then they help them with some type of business opportunity. They form some type of business opportunity, and then there you go, the shit takes off. Because it's like, a lot of times, I mean, don't get me wrong, I mean, a white woman could use some of her white privilege, right? And the power of the white unity, possibly, if they don't find out that she married to a black guy, and then they make some money, right? But the thing is that that very much is an important part of that, and in many regards that's one of the reasons why black men kind of do get with white women, because they're trying to kind of use that white privilege card. I think that's primarily something that's overlooked at why. Well, it's mainly the sexual thing why white men don't like the idea of white women getting with black men. But one of the things I have to say outside of sex, the most kind of powerful thing about that is, it's kind of like, a black dude can use that white privilege card. He has access with that white woman. You could probably even say for even black women as well, using that white, kind of riding that white privilege card. But nobody can use it really better than black men, because black women can't necessarily control a white man, but a black man, his relationship is usually where, okay, it's a situation where obviously a man, most of the men, I'll just say non-black men, have a relationship where they are the authority in the relationship. They make the decisions. Well, it's the same thing, right? With black women, they're not necessarily controlling a lot of those white men. They're not controlling them like that, right? The white men are controlling the relationship with those black women. So, in the sense of, black men, they're in the same, position where they're telling their woman what to do, and white women tend to listen to their men, right? So they're listening to what's being told. So that man is able to use that privilege and start businesses and companies, and kind of use that white privilege card to the max. And that's one of the reasons that it's kind of like, some black dudes do know about, and they tap into that and they use it, to their advantage. And the thing is that, it's like, yeah, it's like, that's one of the reasons that's not really talked about, why black men do get with white women. It's almost like the movie The Banker. If you ever saw the movie The Banker, uh, it's like that, but it's not. You're in a relationship and it's a heterosexual relationship, and the person that is it's just like that. I ain't gonna go into further. It's just kind of like that, but it's one of those things where, yeah, that's, it's not really talked about, but people do talk about it. But yeah, you get to use that white privilege card, man. And it's might even more of a privilege, right? Because Becky does have a lot of power, right? You know what I'm saying? In the white community, Becky, you could even say, is the power, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna get out of there, but yeah, it's a thing where uh, you know, we'll see, I guess, what will come of this whole, black community, um, you know, nuclear family model, whatever that looks like. I mean, I will say the also the aspect of like interracial relationships, primarily black men with white women, um, it's an interesting reality, because this reality is very, very new in America, in a sense of open out in the, in about, you know whether people like it or not, they can't do anything about it. This whole concept of being able to, have relationships with, white women, um you got to understand, this is not necessarily liked, right? It's not liked by black women or, you know, white men, which is kind of weird. I'm not gonna go into that hat, but you know, it's kind of tripped out. You know, a lot of people talk about that. You know, they talk about, well, the people that don't like these relationships, it's kind of odd that they both were, you know, in relationships with each other throughout, you know, the time immemorial in, you know, white, you know, basically America, right? You know, white black women came over with the slave boats, and they were, you know, in high demand. And yeah, like, you know, slave masters, you know, basically sex slave, right? And it's been that way for, you know, centuries in the United States in some form or fashion. Well, you know, now, you know, and it was a situation where the obviously the male slaves, the male black slaves, could definitely not have sex with the white mistresses or white women, period, right? That was just, it was a closed system. Well, you know, basically the BBC is has been let loose, and it cannot be disturbed by law for the last, you know, 50, 60 years. And this is bringing in basically a new society in America. It's bringing in kind of a similar society as in the UK, you could even say. And it's kind of new, right? It's very, very new, in a sense of out in the open, you know, not really being able to be disturbed, right? You can't, you know, like I say, I mean, the white man was able to, you know, have whatever reality he wanted to have with black women for centuries. And, you know, the black man could not have no other reality but his own woman. And in some regards, he had to give his woman up to the white man to be with, right? Well, you know, he couldn't necessarily go get with white women, right? He couldn't do that. It was no out. He could, you know, he could only, he may be able to get a native woman or maybe, I don't know, a Hispanic woman, but he couldn't get with a, you know, white woman for sure, right? Unless it was in secret. They had a law against it, a federal law, that Loving versus Virginia, right? And that was about a white man and a black woman relationship. That was what that was about, right? But the whole thing is this. Well, you know, laws change, things, you know, country sentiments change as far as, you know, you can't just, you know, basically hang a man because he wants to deal with a white woman, right? These things, these cultural norms, you know, became challenged, right? Well, the thing is that, you know, I've said this before, black men can only really enjoy white women undisturbed for, you know, only the last, what, 30, 40 years, 50 years, maybe. Really, to be honest, probably about 40, maybe 30. You can have a fucking argument about that, about when that actually, or is, you know, is it fully, you know, undisturbed now is the question, right? But the thing is yeah, you could do whatever you want. You could have a porn tape, you can have a marriage, you could have a relationship, you could have as many babies as you want, right, with a white woman, right? Well, you know, this is very, very new to black men. This is, you know, very new, and it's a new concept, and it's bringing forth a new America, a new society. You know, a society that's going to be very different, and it's, you know, a situation where it's going to be, you know, a new type of America. You know, where it might be more about class than race. You know, race may no longer be more of an issue. You know, race might be, you know, basically the idea of it or the reality of it is going to be basically minimized. I mean, it's already kind of goofy now. If you in case you really didn't understand how, kind of how goofy it's really getting, it's really, you can understand with, today's, climate and what is actually going on. It's getting real goofy over just my lifetime. Is definitely gotten more and more goofy. It's going to get more and more goofy over time, and it's going to be like kind of more like basically just a different society. Basically, I'm already seeing it, and it's a good thing. I'll just say it, to me, is positive, because it's like, it's, you have people that don't really blend in like that. I mean, Indian, basically the Asians and the Middle Eastern people, I'll just say, they definitely ain't trying to mix. Like, they not mixing like that, right? Those are the people that are the least likely to mix. I would say out of the, basically Middle Easterners and Asians, I would say the Asians probably would mix in more than the Middle Easterners, but the Middle Easterners for sure ain't really mixing in big numbers with black men. You know what I'm saying? As far as the women, right? You damn near gotta be fucking a doctor to get right a Indian woman, right, or whatever, or some type of Asian woman, right? So it's, kind of selective, highly, let's just say highly selective, right? So yeah, that's the thing, right? So as far as other races, I mean, Hispanics, white women, not all of them, date black men or deal with black men, have children with black men. These things are going to, basically change a scenario where basically black men can't sexually compete, because that's really what it was about. Black men were denied sexual competition or denied the ability to sexually compete. So it's like now that door has, been lifted. It's interesting to see that black men are able to kind of, in a market, let's just say in a sexual marketplace, they're able to compete. They're able to fit in different areas where it was kind of closed off, or it was, kind of restrictions, let's just say. So, those are interesting dynamics, right? So, this is very much a new world, a new society. And a lot of people, obviously, that are non-black do not like this society. They don't like this. They hate. That's where all of the hate is coming in, and the looks. Everywhere I go, I get looks and shit by, non-black men, basically. You know, because, I don't know, whatever. But yeah, this is open, and it's, very competitive. White men, if they want to even get with black women, they have to pay, child support. Everybody's got to pay child support, so you got to compete financially. You have to compete in the bedroom, and the boardroom, and all in between. You got to compete with, as far as, if you're, a active father or not. So it's a competition, and it's like, you know it's a lot of people don't really look at it like that. Men don't look at it like that, or don't want to look at it like that, but it is, and that's the thing. But I pretty much said quite a bit. I was all over the place with this. I believe I made some pretty good points, very excellent points. I'm pretty sure people will listen to this and, you know, hopefully like it and, you know, pretend like it wasn't the best fucking live stream they ever heard and, try to diminish the value. But I know this was some good content. I'm cold with it. I know I'm cold with it. I'm just, trying to, I guess, give you, what you subscribe for, I guess. Best way I can describe it. All right.